What's up, everybody? It's Kristen, and welcome to this week's talk. So we're rounding out a toxic relationship series. The first video was friendships, toxic friendships. The second one was about families and all the different dynamics that go along with a toxic family relationship. And then for the last one, I want to talk about toxic partner relationships. Now, I wrestled with whether to call it intimate relationships, romantic relationships. But then I kind of started to think about it further, and I'm like, a toxic relationship can't be intimate, nor can it be romantic. It may be lustful, it may be obsessive, it may be masked as some sort of, positive emotion, but really it can't be romantic. It can't be intimate, in my opinion. And so I'm going to call it partner just to allude to the type of relationship, which is a significant other or someone that you've chosen to be in a relationship with, if that makes sense. So there's so many different signs, just with the rest of the videos, there are so many different signs of a toxic relationship, but I just want to highlight a few of them and talk about them more in depth. And so the first one is a foundation of dishonesty or mistrust. If you get into a relationship and someone makes a mistake and you all are trying to work through and recover from that mistake, that's one thing. But if you enter a relationship and you already don't trust that person, if there's already been a pattern of behavior that leads you to not trust them and then entering into a relationship with them, even if they do everything right, which they won't because we're imperfect people, but even if they did everything right, that foundation of mistrust that's already been laid there is going to cause issues in your relationship unless those things are dealt with, whether it be through counseling, whether it be through your own personal work, couples work, working through whatever issues related or outside of that relationship. Until those things are dealt with, that foundation of mistrust and dishonesty is still there. And so you can build a whole house, you can build a whole family, a whole career, a whole geographical move, all these different things for that relationship. But at the end of the day, that foundation is shaky. And so first and foremost, if it's built on anything shaky, the relationship is gonna be shaky. Number two is a refusal to communicate. So issues come up, and yes, there are different communication styles. Some people want to talk about it right then and right there. Some people need to go process and think on their own a little bit more. Some people need space just to cool off, whatever have you. But the point of communication is that it happens at some point. And the different personalities that we bring to the table are able to be dealt with and negotiated and compromised so that you all can work through things. But if you have someone who refuses to communicate, who shuts down like any type of emotional conversation to express how you've been hurt or to just anything, someone who refuses to communicate, they are controlling the relationship. They are making your choice for you as to whether you all talk about the situation or not. And so that is a sign of toxicity. Anybody who shuts down your need to communicate and be emotional, open up, work through things is not really in the relationship for you. They're in the relationship to control and to keep the power. Number three for that would be a lack of empathy. And really all these things could kind of pour into the same type of profile, but it may be that they don't. And so I list them separately, but a lack of empathy. So say you do with this person get the chance to communicate and talk about things. Do they hear you? Do they hear you? And hearing is not just with your ears. Hearing is with your heart and with your mind and with your intuition and with your soul. And so if you're finding it's hard to discern, but it's also very intuitive when someone lacks empathy for you. You can tell that they lack empathy. For whatever reason, it doesn't quite hit under the surface as to how their behavior or their choice or whatever has happened has truly affected you. And so if you're talking with your partner, you're expressing how you feel, they may even say they feel terrible, but do they feel terrible for you? Do they realize the emotional experience that you have had based off of their actions? And that's something that not everybody has the tools to tap into. Unfortunately, There's a lot of different reasons why someone might lack empathy. I would say it usually goes back to some sort of attachment issue or something in their childhood that was neglected for them that they never quite mended, and therefore they're not able to produce it for anyone else because it wasn't given to them or it wasn't nurtured the way it needed to be nurtured. But for someone who might be in a relationship with someone who lacks empathy, I would say that's a huge red flag, because relationships, as I said earlier, are supposed to be intimate. They're supposed to be environments where you can be vulnerable and process and grow and figure things out. And if you have someone that doesn't quite get your experience, whether it be with them or the way you exist in the world, if they aren't tapping into how you feel on that deeper level, then there's going to be problems. They're going to come across self-centered. They're not going to really be able to show up for you the way that they need to in a relationship. And the last one that I want to mention, abuse. So of course, abuse we have talked about and heard about, domestic violence, and even now more so emotional, mental abuse that comes along with relationships. Certainly all of those are huge red flags, but something that it's not really all that talked about as much, or maybe it's just that we have differing views on what's expected in a relationship, but sexual abuse in a relationship is a thing. It's a thing. And so sometimes we get confused, and we think that because I'm in a consenting relationship, that means that I'm consenting to everything sexual that might happen in that relationship, or it's been taught to me that I should, consent to everything sexual because I'm in a relationship with this person. And no, I don't know how else to say that. That's just not true. And if you feel like you're in a situation where you can't communicate your sexual boundaries with someone, or if you're communicating them and they're not being honored, then that's a toxic relationship. And so what do I mean? This could be like across the board. I'm just going to think of, a couple to use as examples. So someone who you're in a relationship with, married, may not be married, whichever way, I don't care. If you're in a relationship with someone, and for example, that the woman in the relationship stops taking her birth control, something that maybe you guys have agreed on, for whatever reason, and have been doing, and she stops taking it without letting you know, I consider that to be a form of abuse. I absolutely do, because you're not fully aware of what's going on within your sexual relationship with that person. And so if they're stopping it or starting it is between you two, you know what I mean? That could be a conversation. But if one person is taking that choice and that power away from you to be aware of what you're getting yourself into in that sexual relationship, then that is a form of abuse. And another example of that might be if you're in a sexual situation with someone and they refuse to use protection. It could be, refusal could just be straight up no, and maybe trying to kind of like coerce you into continuing, or it could be, I'm not going to have sex with you if you want it to be protected. And those situations are 100% sexual abuse, because that person is using some sort of sexual energy or some sort of situation that is sexual to have power or to leave you in the dark about something that's going on. And at the end of the day, it's your body, it's your situation, and that's not honoring to anybody within the relationship for secrets and manipulation to be a part of it. And the reality is that you shouldn't have to be forced into setting boundaries. You know, a healthy, loving relationship honors those things. You need to communicate about them, but they honor those things without taking it there every time. You shouldn't feel like your boundaries are being pushed every single time something happens. You should learn each other. There should be communication proactively about these situations. And if you're finding that some of these these are huge red flags, by the way. If some of these red flags are coming up for you, it's time to get out. And that's all I got. So if you have questions about this or wanna have further information about it, I'm gonna provide some resources below that you can check out. always feel free to reach out to me. I am providing life coaching through B3, and I'm also a therapist. And so if you need help in this area, feel free to reach out to me for help or a referral. And don't forget to believe, be free, and be well.